I had just shot my biggest deer and the camera didn't even capture the impact. No blood trail, and this season there was a lot more at stake than just filling a tag.
This video is a great example about overcoming adversity and having quiet strength and patience. Some virtues that were taught to me by my grandfather, and he didn't really hunt much, but my dad hunted a lot and he showed me a lot when it comes to raising dogs, training dogs, scouting, knowing how stuff works in the woods. Not just specifically deer hunting or hunting with dogs, but just how the woods work in general. So I just want to thank both my dad and my grandpa for being strong fatherly figures to me. And if you're out there going through a tough time in life, I just encourage you to stay the course and power through it, knowing that you're going to come out the other side. And if you don't give up, you're going to come out the other side with something to show for it. And that's why this video is different. It's more than just a deer hunting story. I first started deer hunting when I was 13. Like I said before, Dad didn't really deer hunt. He was a Vietnam veteran, so the idea of going out to the woods with a bunch of people shooting guns was never really appealing to him. So I decided I wanted to do it on my own one day. Dad had to work, Mom had to work. So I went out behind the house and sat on a bucket and waited, and about 9:30 in the morning, at about 110 yards, running through the field, I was up in the woods, sitting on kind of a hill overlooking this field. A really nice buck and a doe was running for their life like they do here in northern Ohio during gun season. And somehow with an old break action, single shot, 12 gauge, smooth bore, shot him and hit him directly broadside and dropped him right where he was. From that moment on, I was hooked. I loved it. It was a very, very awesome experience. Really, really wish I had a camera to show it. Going back now, knowing what I do now, I don't know if I'd have the calmness to me to make a shot like that, just because I know how exciting it can be. But I think really just being my first deer, my first experience, to me, I was just shooting an animal. It wasn't really anything too stressful or to worry about rack size or anything, but I ended up getting a pretty nice deer for my first deer, and that's just kind of where my deer hunting journey started. From that point on, I really wanted to learn and expand my way of hunting. Didn't want to just go out and rely on someone running something past me during gun season. I wanted to start bow hunting, and specifically going out, finding sign, and hunting deer, not just waiting on a deer to come to me. I wanted to go hunt the deer, and that's what I set out to do. And it's been really exciting. Bow hunting is one of my favorite things to do. I like getting as close as I can to deer. That's another reason why I started using Three Rivers Archery traditional equipment, because all the mature bucks I've gotten with a bow have been at 10 yards or less. So I didn't really see the need to keep using a compound that much. In this video, I still use a compound some because I didn't feel 100% confident in myself to make an ethical shot with a longbow, because I just started shooting in about September, and our season comes in here September 27th. So I wanted to make sure this year I mix it in to get confident with it before I rely exclusively on it. Next year it'll be different. I'll be shooting a lot more traditional archery. And sticking with tradition, I want to talk about my grandpa some more, because he's very instrumental in my life. He collects antiques and preserves old stuff, and was a historian, and pretty much anything you wanted to know about the town we live in. He knows pretty much every event that's happened in the last 100 years. And he's also a person that it didn't matter what happened to him in life. He stayed calm and collective and level-headed, and never really saw him get upset either. And to me, as a man, that's one of the most admirable traits you can have, because I'm sure, like a lot of you out there, when bad things happen, it's easy to get down on yourself or give up. And as you'll see in this video, I only got this deer I got because I didn't give up. I had to overcome a lot of stuff along the way, and God presented me with a third opportunity at the same deer, and I made it happen. And just to further emphasize how important my grandpa is to my life and my story, he's my mom's dad, so he's my grandpa on my mom's side. My grandpa back in the day used to own a gas station, and at that gas station is where he hired my dad when he was younger, and that's where my mom and dad met. So not only did my grandpa hiring my dad end up with my parents getting married and them meeting, he ended up being the biggest role model and influence in my life. I really think he had a real strong impact on some of the life choices I made. I was a high school football coach for 15 years. And if any of you have done that or played football, you know how time consuming it is, especially in the late summer into the fall. And where I coached was 45 minutes from home. So pretty much 7 days a week, I was gone either all afternoon or in the mornings even sometimes. And our schedule we played, all the teams were 2 hours away from where I live. So I was not doing very much deer hunting at all. I would still go, still got some nice bucks over the past few years, but I couldn't really commit myself to it. And with that being said, I've now retired. My kids are old enough to be in school all day, and I take them to and from school and get them ready and everything. And I've started coaching their Little League teams, so that's been a pretty neat change. But with this change, I've got a lot more time in the fall to go out and scout, and I knew that would make this season special. So I went out scouting during the late summer, at the end of August, beginning of September. Started finding some rubs and scrapes to look for community scrapes, And we had a ton of corn around us this year. All around this area was heavy corn, which is typically it's a pretty good mix of soybeans, wheat, and corn, but this year's rotation, it was a lot of corn. At this point in the season, I'd been out a handful of times because our season comes in at the end of September. So I went a few different places and saw some small bucks. And after the first few weeks of season, it was about October 10th or somewhere around there, I went out to one of the small patch sections I could hunt that had a cornfield behind it, and like most of the year, it was extremely, extremely windy. But I went out anyways and sat in the tree, and it was supposed to clear up and the wind was supposed to let down that evening. But I started noticing it getting dark in the west again, so I checked my app on my phone and looked, and the weather had changed. So I decided to get down out of my tree stand and walk along the edge of the cornfield and go out to the point of the woods because I knew I could sneak along the corn with the scent cover with the wind blowing in my face, and also the high winds covered my noise. And I had my longbow with me, so I just walked along the edge of the woods and tucked myself in the brush and found a scrape, and I sat there and waited. And it was about 45 minutes after that, I noticed some really, really tall tines coming through the brush to my left, and ended up coming to that point of that woods, turned, came towards that scrape, and I was at full draw with my longbow at that point. He was giant. It was the biggest deer I had seen in person, not just a trail camera, but in person, and he was 7 yards facing me, and he had some brush covering his vitals. It looks a little bit different on camera. It's not in focus, but the camera is further to my right. I was tucked into the woods a little bit more, so it wasn't easy to get a shot, especially with my longbow. I didn't want to risk injuring him. So he just kind of turned around and walked back into the woods, and I went home. And that was my first encounter with him. I knew there was a lot of good deer in the area, but he was one I really wanted to get. And after that first encounter, I backed out of there, didn't really spook him out. We just kind of turned and went back into the woods. So I decided to back out of there and try some neighboring properties, because in late summer, I went and scouted a few places that had some really nice community scrapes. So I wanted to go check them out and see what was hitting them. And then something happened. After my one sit over that community scrape, I was riding my e-bike home and I got a phone call. I was just coming up to my house, my phone started ringing, and it was my mom. And I answered my phone, and she had let me know that my grandpa had passed away. He was 98 years old. He actually ended up passing away on my grandma and grandpa's wedding anniversary. My grandma had already passed away a few years prior, and that just goes to show how strong he was. Even through that, being married to her for 72 years, he still remained strong, was still a role model for me and the family, and someone that we'll always look up to and remember. And of course, from that moment on, sitting all alone in a tree stand, you have a lot of time to think. And that's what I did for the next few weeks. I would bounce around to different spots, trying to get back on that deer, but mostly I was just thinking of all the stuff that me and my grandparents did, all the lessons they taught me. And really, I felt bad for my mom and my uncle and my aunt, because knowing how I felt, I couldn't imagine what they were going through. And from that phone call on, any time in my life, whether I be deer hunting or just everyday stuff, dealing with adversity, something that would normally upset me or make me mad, I would just remember him and remember how strong and patient he was. And it's really inspired me to try and be a better man in person, especially for my kids. And those lessons he taught me would really help me this deer season, because from that moment on, I had to deal with a lot of nonsense, from people driving by where I'm hunting and honking their horns and screaming and swearing at me from the road, and people trespassing on dirt bikes and doing donuts in the fields where I was hunting. Typically that would have sent me off, and I didn't really care at the point because I was thinking of more important things than just deer hunting. So for about 2 weeks straight, I hunted almost every day, trying to overcome that, and without fail, it seems like something was always happening, whether that be people yelling from the road, people riding ATVs and dirt bikes where they're not supposed to be. It was just always something that interrupted the hunt, but I overcame it and stayed patient and just stayed the course. And while that was happening, it wasn't like I was hunting in the same place over and over again. I have a mobile tree stand set up, so I hunt in different trees and different locations almost every time I go. But without fail, even going to different areas, I would encounter something like that would just normally really upset me, but I saw it as a test, and I decided to stay patient and show quiet strength like my grandpa did, and work to overcome it. And after I bounced around for a few weeks or so, it was towards Halloween, I believe, I went back to where that community scrape was. Didn't have a stand there anymore because, like I said, I bounced around, tried new spots. But I went out there early in the morning when it was still dark, set up my stand in the dark, got clear up in the stand, started getting my backpack put away, hung up my camera arm. My bow was still on the ground with the rope attached to it, and I went to grab my bow rope, and as I went to move to grab it, I looked up, and it was getting gray light now. That giant buck was at about 8 yards, walked out of the cornfield, walked over to that scrape and started working that scrape, and there was nothing I could do besides stand still and hope that he'd stay in the area long enough for me to get my bow up. And he stayed there for probably 20 or 30 minutes, and it was light then, and he slowly just walked off away from me. Never saw him again that day, so I got really discouraged because all the other stuff going on with people harassing me and having 2 chances at the biggest buck in the area where I could hunt. And the biggest buck I've gotten, I didn't think it could happen any more times than that. I thought I had blew my chance. This was my second encounter with him, and it was a different location. So not only did I get on this deer once, I got on him twice in 2 separate spots, 2 different properties. And at that point, I was getting really frustrated. I had been hunting really hard, harder than I've ever hunted deer-wise, and I wanted to spend some more time with my family, so I took a few days off. But November was here, and I knew I needed to get out in a tree stand. And on November 5th, I had my stand up actually in a property that I was gonna go hunt, but I saw the weather was gonna change and the wind was gonna be shifting. So I knew I had to get it out of there because the wind would have been blowing my scent directly into the bedding area. So once Mom came and started watching the kids, I went out and got my stand, took it down, put it on my back, went to a new spot that I hadn't hunted this year. Just walked around and scouted, because that's my favorite thing to do when I'm deer hunting, is actually get real-time data and look around. And the wind was wild that day once again, so I knew I could move around a lot without anything hearing me, and the scent was blowing in my face. So I found a couple old logging trails that intersected together with some deer trails on it, and I found a small faint scrape. So I decided to put up my tree stand there for the right wind that evening. So at that point I went back home because I have to go get my son from school at about 3. So then after I picked up my son from school, I took him to Mom and Dad's. They watched him while I went hunting. I ended up getting in the woods about 3:30, and I was sitting on my stand and I contemplated getting down again because I had to hold my seat with my hands because that tree was swaying so much. Ridiculously windy, but I thought, no, it was a big oak tree. I thought it's gonna be fine. I just need to tough it out. Then it was about 4:15. I was kind of looking around, and out of nowhere, the buck just appeared. With it being so windy, I couldn't hear him approach at all. Luckily, I just caught him right there working that scrape. He came into that scrape that I saw. And at that point, he was about 10 yards away. So I waited just a little bit because he was behind a tree, and I was focused in on him. I just had my camera set up to capture the area. I didn't exactly know if he was in the frame or not. At that point, I had already had 2 encounters with him. I didn't want to really risk blowing a 3rd chance messing with the camera. So I just left the camera covering the area and waited for him to take a couple more steps. He got broadside at about 8 yards, and I drew back and leaned out around that tree and let an arrow fly. He just kind of trotted off after that, didn't really bust out like he was hurt or anything. Made me very nervous, so I didn't know if I hit him or not. Went to review the footage, and of course he was standing behind a tree, so I couldn't tell the impact. So I got down on my tree stand and looked for blood on the trail he ran. Didn't see any blood at first. Ended up seeing my arrow buried in the dirt about 4 inches, covered in blood. Well, was nervous.
got down here and looked at my arrow. Well, first I got nervous because I walked where he ran, didn't see any blood at all. Then I found my arrow covered in blood. What's funny, the scrape right here he was working, I peed on it a couple hours ago when I hung the stand. But I didn't see any blood, and I was getting nervous. I called my friend Ethan and was telling him what was going on. And I walked probably 20 yards, and he went a total of probably 40 yards and is just laying over there dead. That is the best deer I've ever gotten, I'm pretty sure. We'll see when we get up there.
That arrow zipped through him, complete pass through, filled up with blood. It was a great shot. At that point, I was super excited because one of the main reasons I really wanted to start making more deer hunting videos is because my kids absolutely love the other deer hunting videos I made. They asked to watch them all the time, and I love filming the recovery, getting to see the kids' reactions to the deer. So I knew it would be great to go get my son, especially because he's old enough now to walk in the woods and stuff. My daughter's still a little bit too young for that. But so at that point, I called my mom and dad, told them I got him, and went back and got my son and had my good friend Jimmy come over, and we went and got that deer.
Missile arrow behind.
A missile?
Yeah.
The arrow is 650 grains. It basically is a missile.
Yeah.
Emmett and James with us. You guys excited?
Yeah. I even see some over
Well,
here.
keep following it, buddy.
I see you. I see you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is the one I've been after. Giant 10 point. The third time I've had this deer at 10 yards or less. I am so glad I got him. My wife probably got so tired of hearing me talk about it, but he's been haunting my dreams. Seeing him that many times at under 10 yards, one time being a full draw, I thought I never had a chance, but if it happens once, it happens twice, it can happen 3 times, I guess. Oh gosh. Look at that thing. He's the fattest deer I've ever seen in my life. What do you think, buddy? Come over here. Put your hands on it. Look at that. That is the fattest deer I've ever seen. I'm sorry.
It's gonna be a rough winter this year.
I'm sorry you're coming to help me drag this thing out.
Oh yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, he's massive. Single bevel, 650 grain. Zip through him like butter.
When we first got there, I could not believe how big bodied that deer was. I knew he was big, judging by some of the trail camera footage I got later on, and just seeing him by himself, it was hard to tell. But once you got up on him, he was the biggest bodied deer I'd ever seen in person. And at that moment, I knew my grandpa was with me, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had the patience and determination to stick it out and keep going out and fighting through all that adversity. But because of him, I ended up getting it done. After that, we got to have some more fun. We got him loaded up and took him home and got to show the rest of the family.
We got him gutted and loaded up and got him back home.
Yeah, that looks like it's so small.
What do you think, guys?
This is a beautiful deer.
The one thing I hope you take away from this video is to never give up. We all face adversity all the time, every day in our lives, some more than others. My story's not unique at all. We all face suffering in life, and if we never give up and have a good attitude, we can come out through the other side just like I did, have success, just never give up. And I learned this because of my grandfather, and I appreciate you listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed sharing it with you, and I just wanted to say thank you, Grandpa.